The Hidden Hindu, Book 1 of the trilogy by Akshat Gupta, Chapter 13, Classified Transformation. Back in the woods, the man impatiently checked his digital watch and knew he had no more time to waste. The plan had to be executed soon. I ought to call him for the last time, he thought. Taking his cell phone out of his pocket, he had to confirm the whereabouts of his partner before he decided to storm the facility alone. His partner rejected the call. He must be close to the target. The man mused. He then decided to send a voice note that said, "I am entering the facility as per our plan. You stick to it." He then readied himself with heavy arms and ammunition, his face still hidden behind a black facade, and strode over to the entrance of the facility. Looking around, scanning for cameras, he found one at the entrance and, after checking that all was clear, shot an arrow in its direction. It hit the camera's eye and ruptured it. He then sneaked into the building with his automated arrow shooter, a glass covering one of his eyes attached to his forehead by a ring that circumvented his head. The glass showed images of men present inside, along with a three-dimensional view of the building with all its corridor and room, directing him towards the cell where Om had been held captive. He could fix his target with the glass and then shoot him with his arrows, leaving no room for mistake. He also had a belt bag tied around his waist with similar-sized pockets in the front. The sides of his rear there are a metallic piece attached to his right hand from wrist to elbow, with a small arrow placed on its muzzle. He carried another bag on his back with a PDW-19 assault rifle with a range of 250 feet, 40% stability in its grip, a maximum zoom of 20 times, a clip size of 25 bullets, which took 4.50 seconds to be reloaded automatically, and two P622 pistols with a range of 150 feet, clip size of 8 bullets that took 3 seconds to reload. After taking a few cautious steps, he saw a guard with a gun in the other corner of the corridor. He slowly moved toward the guard. The glass displayed how far he was from the guard. He then came to a halt and stood still. The glass displayed "Target reachable" in a bright green color. It helped to set the hand and eye coordination between the arrow and the target. Then he shot his first arrow, which hit the target on his head. The guard fell dead instantly. The arrow shot toward the. He ran towards the guard, making sure not to make any noise. He checked one of the pockets of his belt bag, took out a fiber plate, set up the time on it, and fixed it on the wall of the hidden corner. He then moved forward, ready to take the next man down. On the shores of Ross Island, a chopper landed, followed by a speedboat tearing through the sea and reaching the same spot. The man could see the chopper landing slowly. He grabbed his bag and rushed towards it. While sprinting, he loaded his weapons. A man descended from the chopper. They were welcomed with a shower of bullets. Some recoiled and shot in the man's direction. Verbhadra got off the chopper and knew that the book he held was treasure. So, without wasting any time, he looked around for his jeep, found it, and rushed towards it. The man smelled Verbhadra's intentions, and to foil them altogether, shot the wheels of the jeep, and then the driver. Verbhadra threw himself in the driver's seat as the driver fell dead and started the engine to drive the punctured jeep to the facility. The other men engaged the shooter, not allowing him to stop Verbhadra, even at the cost of their own lives. Back in the interrogation room, on the screen, Om had a beard, golden earrings, and a tribal crown on his head, and was being venerated like a god. Om said, "I didn't know how to cheat, lie, or deceive people. I did not take advantage of anybody. A few old men said I was an avatar God had sent for them. They believed serving me was like serving God himself. These people had seen me recover from deadly diseases, walk out of natural disasters unharmed. This belief continued, and my life passed uneventfully for some time. But then a few young men died for some unknown diseases. People started noticing that I had not aged a day since I had joined their clan, and the old men leading the tribe who believed and worshipped me died their natural deaths, and with them died their belief. Time changed, their leaders changed too. I was now considered a curse that sucked the life out of young people to remain young. They believed I was the reason for the deaths of the young men. A few of them still had faith in me and fought for me, but the fear of darkness was dominated by light of faith. I was expelled from the tribe. They did not kill me because of the fear of a bigger curse. I was alone again. Now I knew that I had to keep changing my identities and location as no one was mentally prepared to accept the truth. Since then, I have been hiding myself, but the door of the interrogation room opened with a bang and Dr. Stravanson entered. Ohm got alarmed. The sudden noise of the door drew everyone's attention towards Dr. Stravanson. Furious, Dr. Stravanson saw Ohm and started walking toward him. Sir, are you? Dr. Batra said and was interrupted by Dr. Stravanson, who showed him a palm, a signal to remain quiet. Dr. Stravanson grabbed Ohm's shirt in both his hands and stared at him with eyes red with anger. Sir, what is wrong with you? What are you? Shahista stood up. Dr. Stravanson looked into Shahista's eyes, and she instantly knew that not saying anything was the only choice she had right now. Dr. Stravanson brought his gaze back to Ohm, only to find his calm and composed as usual, waiting for a question. The old man in the chamber saw all of it and pressed a panic button. China, Ohm said. Dr. Stravanson calmed down at once upon hearing what happened Chotu in Ohm's tone and language, but the next moment his fury returned and he replied in Telugu, I am not Chotu. I have questions and I want straight answers. Okay, if not Chotu, then what shall I call you? Kanju? Ohm said. No one calls me by that name anymore. How can you possibly know that? Who are you? Dr. Stravanson replied. Ohm closed his eyes and the screen came back to life. The image it projected showed a few students in a classroom seated on the wooden benches of an old, decrepit government school wearing half pants, white half shirts, and slippers. Some of them were barefoot. They were all bullying their classmate who was sobbing. Then Ohm, the teacher, entered the classroom and scolded them all for bullying the kid. He shooed all of them out of the class and sat with the innocent student talking to him and calmed him down. Do you remember that? Ohm said calmly. Dr. Stravanson's eyes welled up with tears, and he cried like a kid again. He was compelled to believe in the impossible after seeing his own childhood with Ohm. He now believed everything Ohm had said and saw him with compassion and respect. The others in the room were clueless as to what was happening due to their lack of knowledge in Telugu. Dr. Shahishta came near both of them, just as LSD's computer beeped. She looked at the screen, which went blank for a second, before the old man's face appeared on it. LSD got alert and pressed enter on the keyboard once. Her screen now displayed a digital watch. 8:43, it read, and the countdown started with each passing second. Her eyes went wide, and she saw Piramal. He was already looking at her. He had received the same beep at the same face with the same timer. Piramal moved a few steps towards Abhilash's bench and put a hand on his shoulder. Suddenly, the jolly and careless hacker changed into a mature and sincere adult. The childish face vanished in the dark. The introverted, silent, and scared Piramal suddenly became hyperactive. At the distance between the jeep and the facility reduced to less than 2 kilometers, the man decided to start running to follow Verbhadra after he had killed all his men. He now chased him. Verbhadra, on the other end, reached with a punctured jeep and entered the building. His body was full of injuries and his face was red. With blood smeared over it, he panted heavily as he entered the facility and called Dr. Stravanson. The armed security guards surrounded him to guard him and were on high alert. In the interrogation room, Dr. Stravanson asked, "What's in the book?" Ohm smiled with the faith that the books were safe at the place where he had hidden them himself. He was unaware of the fact that the books were at Ross Island like him. Those books are the answers to the biggest secret in the world, death. They hold what men have not yet discovered. They contain the key to immorality. They describe the process of making a man similar to me. Time keeps an account of every second in everyone's life, so you age every day. The books have the ability to make you fall off the vision of the almighty time. Imagine you don't exist for time. For you, death is an illusion. For the one who passes through the books, life will be forever. Dr. Stravanson's phone rang just as he was trying to comprehend what Ohm had said. It was Verbhadra, he answered. "Sir, I have the book. I'm now entering the facility. Someone followed us to the island. Where are you, sir?" he said, almost out of breath, owing to the rush. Virabhadra's voice screeched through the phone so that Om heard every word of what he said. Om's shock was evident on his face, and for the first time so far he felt cheated. All his kind feeling towards his old student suddenly dried up. He looked at Dr. Srivasan unemotionally, just as he ordered his man to proceed towards the interrogation room and told him to wait outside until he came and collected the book himself. He hung up. His eyes were full of guilt, and his face an epitome of apology. With the same feeling, he said, I committed a mistake, but I never knew I was doing so. I'm going to rectify it now. Before I leave, please know that I was not leading this team. Someone else was, and it wasn't before today that I knew I stood on the wrong side. All of them are innocent. These kids they know nothing. Om closed his eyes, disappointed, and said, What have you done? Whom are you all working for? I thought I was working for money, so I never tried to know the details of the work. All of them thought they were working for me, and because they trusted my judgment, they asked nothing. I have to leave now to safeguard the books from his filthy hands. I've committed an unpardonable mistake, but please try to forgive me if I fail in my quest. Dr. Srivasan, his head bowed out of guilt and shame. Suddenly, he turned and went to the camera installed on one of the walls for the old man to see, and hit it many times till it broke into pieces. The old man watched Dr. Srivasan hitting the camera, and then the screen went blank. The old man smiled. Dr. Srivasan held Om's hand, pressed them into his once, and turned to leave. Om asked, Who paid you to do this? His name is Nagendra. That is all I know, came the answer as Dr. Srivasan left the room in a rush. Om's face turned pale upon hearing the name. He was astounded, as everyone else, to his story of immorality. Dr. Srivasan left. Premal started walking towards the exit. Premal, Dr. Batra called after him. Going for a smoke, said Premal without looking behind him. Dr. Batra and Shashida looked at each other, surprised, as this time Premal did not stammer. While LSD kept herself engrossed in pressing the keys on her computer, she really looked as if she was in a hurry. As Premal got away from the sight of his teammates, he ran as fast as he could towards the kitchen, which was right behind the facility, where 3 right turns from the door at the end of the corridors. He reached the kitchen, went to the common wall between the kitchen and the facility, and stood there, waiting for something impatiently. He checked his watch every now and then. The old man still sat behind his desk, noticing every move of everyone. Dr. Batra and Dr. Shahistra stood in the middle of the room, stunned at the change in the atmosphere around them. They were witnessing Dr. Srivasan conversing with Om Shastri with a lot of gratitude and respect, and in tears. His body language revealed that, like LSD and Primrose, the two was in a hurry. Abhilash lay down in his chair, sleeping with his head on the desk. LSD was totally engrossed in her computer and was typing a code which was tattooed on her left toe. 1 Corinthians 15:51 read the code. It meant victory over death. As she pressed enter in the keyboard, the wall where Primrose was waiting transformed into a door. A few bricks fell off, and a small screen with a touch keypad asked for a code. He typed in the same code, 1 Corinthians 15:51. The door opened. It was a narrow passage between the walls, only 3 feet wide and 6 feet long. A narrow hidden room came into view, a room full of all kinds of weapons used for assassination, bulletproof armor, and suits. This passage had white light, and every weapon was displayed on the walls. It had another door opposite the first one. The door opened back into the interrogation room. Primrose started picking things up without wasting any time. LSD was continuously eyeing everyone to find a solitary moment. She now had it. She rushed towards the washrooms at the corner of the interrogation room. The masked man had brutally killed the guards in the corridor without making any noise whatsoever. Then his partner entered the facility and openly shot everyone he saw dressed in a uniform. The gunshots echoed in the facility and deafened everyone inside it. As all the guards rushed to the entrance, the first partner's path cleared up and saved him a lot of time in reaching the interrogation room. Om heard the gunshots along with Shahistra and Dr. Batra. He was at once galvanized into action and requested them to free him, or there would be grave consequences which they would not live to see. Abhilash didn't react and kept slumbering. Dr. Butcher approached him and Sahishtra went to Om, fighting in her head and dilemma of right and wrong. Dr. Butcher tried to jolt Abhilash awake, but he lay there senseless. Dr. Butcher checked his pulse, only to find him dead. Sahishtra panicked and decided to untie Om. Premal had killed Abhilash the moment he had seen the old man's face on the computer. How and why were questions that nobody in the interrogation room had the answer to. Dr. Srivatsan reached the corridor of the chamber and told Verbhadra to hand him the book. Verbhadra, unaware of the gravity of the situation, handed the book to him. Dr. Srivatsan hugged the book tight to his chest and started back towards the interrogation room. The old man saw it all. He picked up the earpiece and pressed a button. "Liz," he whispered in his throaty voice. Inside the washroom, LSD listened intently from a similar earpiece and replied, "Yes, sir." He stood on a tap and pulled an unseen and inaccessible bag hidden in the loft of the washroom. The Piramal who had gone inside the passage and the one who came out of it were two entirely different men, and yet were the same. In the interrogation room, as Dr. Butcher and Shahida struggled to untie Om, LSD came out. Shahida and Dr. Butcher witnessed a severe transformation in her. They saw her walking towards them with a pair of automated P622 pistols, the same pistols as the man who was now approaching the interrogation room had tied to his thighs. This man's partner, heavily loaded with ammunition, blasted the front entrance with a bazooka. With many casualties in a single shot, it was impossible for the guards to locate the man in the thick woods. The sun was going down with each passing moment in the facility. As Dr. Srivatsan entered the interrogation room, he saw LSD and instantly knew that not all the members were as innocent as he had imagined. He was panting heavily as he stepped into the room. He tried to pretend that nothing had happened, but LSD had decided his fate. As Dr. Srivatsan read LSD's eyes, she smiled sarcastically. All was quiet before LSD coldly shot Dr. Srivatsan in the chest and snatched the book from him. Dr. Srivatsan fell on the floor and blood gushed out from his body. He died slowly, feeling all the pain he was meant to. Dr. Butcher and Sahishtra stood in utter shock, watching Dr. Srivatsan breathing his last and LSD brutally watching him. Guilt was far from her. The old man back in the chamber smiled as he saw the book in LSD's hands. LSD aimed the gun at Dr. Butcher and Sahishtra together and warned, "Don't, or before you even realize that I have a knack of using both my hands simultaneously, your souls will have met their maker." Om witnessed everything in the process of being untied. "You want to kill us? You really shoot at us, huh?" Sahishtra said in a rather courageous tone. "If need be," came to blunt reply from LSD. "What are you waiting for then?" Sahishtra asked. LSD smiled a shameless smile and said, "My orders," walking towards the only exit of the room and locking it from the inside. After ending the lives of two more guards who stood outside the doors of the interrogation room in the way he liked, in peace and in quiet, the man parted with his masks and his glasses too. He had long white hair and a well-built body. He took off his armor from his chest to reveal large golden bracelets encircling both his wrists. He picked up his bow and arrow with his left hand and kicked the door of the interrogation room hard. Primo, loaded with ammunition, reached the old man's room and sat on the floor at his knees. The old man pampered him, while he pampered Primo. The old man kept an eye on all the visuals on the screen. Suddenly, he saw someone killing the man at the door of the interrogation room, and trying to break it open, he pointed towards the screen in order to show it to Primo. At once, Primo, who was sitting calmly, turned ferocious. He stood up in one fine movement and went for Om, Sahishtra, and LSD.